What is going on, guys? Welcome back. In this video today we're going to learn about Apache Parquet and how this format can massively speed up your data operations. So let us get right into it. Alright, so we're going to talk about Apache Parquet in this video today, and we're going to learn how it can speed up your code, how it can speed up your data operations if you use it, for example, in Pandas. Now, Apache Parquet, to keep it simple, is a data file format which is column-oriented instead of record-oriented. CSV, for example, is record-oriented. The difference is that in a column-oriented data file format, you have the data in the same column being stored next to each other, whereas in a record-oriented file format, you have the data that belongs to one record stored next to each other. So depending on what you want to access and how you want to access it, different formats are faster and more efficient. But if you have a lot of columns, if you have to select specific columns, and if you have to access columns quickly, Parquet might be the way to go. So in this video today, we're going to actually look at an example where Parquet is massively faster, working with Parquet files is massively faster or significantly faster than working with CSV files. And for this, we're going to open up a new Python script here, main.py, and we're going to open up the command line to install, first of all, of course, pandas if you don't have it, so pip or pip3 install pandas, and we're also going to install pyarrow. Now, we're not going to use pyarrow manually, but pandas is going to have to use it to be able to process Parquet files. So just install pandas and pyarrow. Once you have that, we're going to need some data set. Now, you can, of course, take any data set and convert it to Parquet, but I wanted to use a data set that already provides a Parquet file so that we can work with it directly. And for this, I asked ChatGPT what the go-to data set is, and it basically told me that this taxi, I don't know exactly what it is. I think it's taxi trip records. There you go. And the data that you can download here. So for example, I can go yellow taxi trip records in January 2023. You can see it's a Parquet file. So I can just click on this here. It will tell me that I'm leaving the website. And now I can basically go to current here. I can download this Parquet file. So this is now a file format that you maybe don't know about. The good thing about pandas is we know how convenient it can be. We can just say import pandas as PD. And I can just go ahead and I can say df, or let's call this df Parquet, is equal to PD read Parquet. This is a function that pandas provides. Again, you need to have pyarrow to actually make it work. But you can just go ahead and say now you want to load this Parquet file here. And then you can print it. So you can just print it like an ordinary data frame, which it is. And you can see we have the data frame here. So this works without problems. Now, to have also a CSV file with the same data, we're now going to go ahead and we're going to say df Parquet to CSV. And we're going to call it the exact same way. So I'm basically going to copy this here. Come on. I'm going to copy this here, and I'm going to just change this to .csv. And then we should have the same data, the Parquet data set, we should have it as a CSV file. It takes some time now because it has to completely change the representation, but then we're going to end up with a CSV file, which basically contains the same information, but of course in a record-oriented way. So maybe we can actually look at this. I can actually go and say open files. And once the CSV file is done, it's actually done. I can now open it. Maybe it will take, oh, actually now I'm opening the Parquet file. This is not what I wanted to do. Sorry about that. Cancel. I'm not sure if LibreOffice is going to be able to open it because it has 345 megabytes. So maybe this is going to be a problem, but we can attempt to do it. But now we have basically the Parquet file and the CSV file. And what we can do now is we have the same data in both files, but we have different representations, different orientations, column-oriented, record-oriented. What we can do now is we can compare certain, LibreOffice says it cannot load it, but you can see that's basically the structure here. Part of it was loaded. This is the CSV file. And what I wanted to say is you can now go ahead and use these two files, CSV and Parquet, which have the exact same data set, and you can measure the time it takes to do certain things. So we can say import time, for example, and we can go ahead and say df Parquet is going to be equal to PD read Parquet. And then you load the Parquet file, and you can do the same thing, df CSV. We'll do the same thing with the CSV file. And now before this, we're going to say start is equal to time. Actually, we can use perf counter This is the more professional way to do it. And then we can print here, print end minus start. And basically we can copy this, we can paste it down here, we can replace this with this, and then we have the 2 times it takes to just load the data set. So I can run this. What's the problem here? Read Parquet. Oh, sorry, of course, we need to say read CSV. Now you can see it took 0.25 seconds to load the Parquet file. It took 4.24 seconds to load the CSV file. So this already is much faster. So you can see it's way faster actually. So we can actually go and use a calculator for this. What was it? It was roughly 4.2, something like this, divided by 0. How can I delete this? 4.2 divided by 0. What was it? 24 or something. 17.5 times faster. So yeah, this is just loading the file. Now, what we can also do is we can import the module sys. So we can just say import sys, and then we can go ahead and say print sys get size of, and we can get the size of these data frames in memory. So how much memory do they take? And we can see here, when I run this, it will take some time again. So now it took 0.3 seconds. Now it took 3.9 seconds. You can see that this is how many bytes I think it takes to store this data frame, the Parquet data frame. And you can see it takes much more here to almost twice as much, a little bit less, to store the CSV file or the CSV data frame. Even though it's the same data, it's the same content. There's no difference there. We can actually take a look at the columns here. So we can actually go ahead and say dfparquet.columns. Maybe we can also get rid of all this here so that we don't have to wait for the CSV file to load. You can see we don't have too many columns. The more columns you have, the more useful a Parquet file is. And also, Parquet is oftentimes used in the context of Hadoop. I don't want to go too deep into this, but essentially when you have the idea of having many columns, because Hadoop oftentimes deals with many columns, this can be particularly useful. But what we're going to do now is we're going to do something specific. We're not going to load all the data. We're going to load specific columns, which is especially useful when you work with Parquet files, because columns are stored next to each other. You can just read the column data and you don't have to go through all the records reading their individual columns. You can just go and say all the column values, I have them immediately. So what we're going to do now is we're going to run this again, or actually we ran this already. We can now go ahead and define selected columns, which is going to be a list. And here we're going to say now, for example, vendor ID. We're going to say, for example, payment type. And we're going to say, for example, I don't know, tip amount, something like this. So I want to have only these 3 columns. What I can do here in order to accomplish that is I can say read Parquet, and I can say columns equals, columns equals selected columns. And for the CSV, I think the keyword is a different one. I think we have to say use columns, so use calls selected columns. And then we can go ahead and see what the difference here is in size, not in size, in time. So here already we have 0.08 seconds that it took me, and here I have 1.3 seconds. So accessing the data, accessing specific columns is much faster using Parquet. Now, this doesn't mean now that you have to always use Parquet. You can play around with it. If you have large data sets, if you have a lot of columns, if you're working maybe in a Hadoop setting or something like that, using Parquet can be particularly interesting and useful. But oftentimes when you have a small data set, a few columns, it's not really that much of a big deal. You can just go with CSV. It's not going to make a big difference. But if you notice that working with CSV is very tedious, takes a lot of time, try to use Parquet. It can massively speed up your data operations. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned something. If so, let me know by hitting a like button and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to not miss a single future video for free. Other than that, thank you much for watching. See you in the next video, and bye.